Hello, good evening, and many thanks for joining us on the Insight tonight. We are on in GBS TV Africa, of course, and I trust you had a lovely day. Tonight, we want to talk about the relevance of neo-Pan-Africanism to current political and social-economic affairs. Well, 57 years ago, our founding fathers defeated the yoke of colonialism and brutal imperialism when Kenya got its independence. So were many African countries along this time, and they were united under the banner of Pan-Africanism, a quest for freedom and unity for Africans and the descent of the continent. As we focus on the succession politics 2022, and our leaders employ various plots, schemes, and tricks on their 2022 matrices and calculations, a look into the past to explain the present and shape the future surfaces. Well, ladies and gentlemen, stay put as we delve into this discussion. And of course, you can get us on GBS TV Africa, that is at on Facebook. You can also get us on Twitter and on Instagram on GBS TV Africa. You can also get me on EUGYNE OCHIENG KWACH on all social media platforms. And to help me tackle this, we have David Doni, who is the president of Pan-African Universities and Colleges Congress, Kenyatta University chapter. We have Dr. Churchill Sauke. Dr. Churchill Sauke is a Pan-Africanist. He is a writer, he is a physicist, and a lecturer at the Jomo Kenyatta University. We have George Ndawa. George Ndawa is a Pan-Africanist. He is an active citizen and a social worker. Gentlemen, first things first, you are members of what I believe is the Pan-African Congress Kenya. Well, I'd love to know, first of all, for those people who do not understand yet, what Pan-African Congress is. What is it? What does it stand for? What is the mission and what is the plan of this Pan-African Congress Kenya? I'll start with you, Dr. Sauke.
Thank you very much, Eugene, and I'm glad to be in GBS, such a wonderful place. As you know, that the Pan-African movement is something that began many years ago, and it was on the basis that, you know, the African people, and especially those of African descent, really wanted to rebuild their identity, drawing from those who had been taken in the diaspora of slave trade. And so they wanted to find their identity. So you look at the Negroes when they were fighting for their rights in the civil rights movements in the United States. That was part of the spirit of rebuilding that African identity. And so there was a global movement of trying to invigorate the spirit of Africa. And so this movement, of course, it moved around the world in different parts of the globe. And the institutionalization of this idea came into finding mechanisms of coalescing those who believed in these ideals into different institutions, and one of which was the establishment of the Pan-African Congress. So the Pan-African Congress has a global movement, which is part of the bigger movement that brings those who believe in the idea of Pan-Africanism. And it has been cascaded within country levels. So each and every country has got their own chapters. We have the Pan-African Congress Ghana, Pan-African Congress Uganda, and even Kenya, where we now have the Pan-African Congress Kenya. And in the Pan-African Congress Kenya, which is now an affiliation of the global one, we also share in the ideals of trying to help to invigorate and envisioning the sense of just creating a united Africa, self-sufficient Africa, an Africa that is self-reliant, that which is able to rebuild the spirit, you know, the traditional culture, and trying not to go too much into modernization to the extent that we forget our ideals and our, you know, the things that made us African. So we envision as a Congress, we are envisioning a united, self-sufficient, self-reliant Africa that is able to have a voice in the international community. We do this by trying to achieve this through missions of just trying to instill the spirit of Pan-Africanism in the ideals of volunteerism, partnership, and cooperation with different stakeholders and different members of in the spheres of government and international organizations and even the civil society organizations.
Okay, we have you as, that is David Dolly, right? The president of Pan-African Universities Colleges Congress, that is Kenyatta University.
Absolutely,
chapter.
yes.
Well, what does it mean to be a Pan-African in the 21st century and as a student?
Well, thank you so much for inviting us here. It's such an honor, and I'm privileged to be here at this moment. I think Pan-Africanism is a broader concept, and it is more than what is said. We have it as more than what is outside there to be known as Pan-Africanism. It dates back in so many years ago, 19th century maybe, and over the years it has fought for Africa, for Africans. We have fought as Africans through struggles. Africa as a continent has suffered. We have suffered slave trade, you know that. We have suffered colonialism. And now we are suffering neocolonialism that is coming after, after we have liberated ourselves. So Pan-Africanism is now beyond Africa for Africans. It goes beyond because we now have to incorporate our economy, our social structure, our political structure, because you realize that we borrow so much from our former colonial masters. Pan-Africanism, in a nutshell, is more of, it is more than a movement. It is more than a geopolitical movement, because what we are envisioning is achievable, and the plan that is there is workable. And in the 21st century, I think much is going to be achieved.
No, you as a student, because you are the president of Pan-African Congress, Kenyatta University chapter.
Yes.
So what are you guys doing as the university, as the president of the students? Because now you are in the chapter of the students. What does it mean actually if there are those students outside there who want to become part of the movement? So what is it like to be a student and be a Pan-African?
Actually, we are trying to do a sensitization. Most people do not know. I think, I don't know whether to call it ignorance,
yes,
because most students nowadays just focus on their academics and they call it that. But as I said, it's beyond that. So what we're doing as a university, as a chapter, we are trying to sensitize comrades, as we call them. We are trying to tell them the future, because the future is in their hands, what role they should play, so that we deliver what we believe is our workable plan. We always try to hold meetings with those who are of like mind. Of course, not everybody is buying the idea. They are rebels, and we know how we are working with them. We are trying to bring them on board, telling them why, and on seeing our documents, on seeing how organized we are, they say, yes, this is amazing. And
okay, well, let me get to George Ndawa, who is an active citizen. Well, George Ndawa, from where you sit as a Pan-Africanist, you've met maybe challenges, and if you've met challenges, as Don was saying, then what are these things that you guys are doing as a Pan-African, as a movement, to ensure that these you curtail the resistance that you get from outside?
May I take the opportunity to appreciate the platform to have this discussion go public in a bigger way, and to get down to that, you know, currently in Kenya, you know, things have changed so much because politics has washed away the Pan-Africanism in the Africans, or rather in us as Kenyans.
Yes.
So this is one big reason why even we are going wider right now and trying to do even recruitments from all levels.
Yes.
Because we want people to get back to the roots. We want to know who we really are, because you see, westernization has put us in a situation where some of us do not even think or believe we are Kenyans. You know, such that if we look at the erosion of African culture and ways of life by the colonialists, we stand robbed like everything from head to toe.
Yes.
You know, because number one, they stole our names, so they gave us their names. They stole our cultures. They gave us their cultures. They stole literally everything from us, such that even right now, if you go out there, you will listen to people naming their children names that are so complicated. They are so technical that if you tell your grandmother in the village the name of your child, she's just praying her God to rescue us, you know. So we want to highlight these things so that we can come out of the westernization, so that we can respect who we really are, because that is the biggest thing that is really lacking.
Okay. So thus far, Dr. Churchill, do you think that we are on the way of achieving Pan-Africanism as Africans? Do you think that we're heading somewhere as you look at from where you sit?
Well, there are many ways in which we can say we have gotten gains in terms of achieving some of the aspirations of the Pan-Africanism, of the dream of our founding fathers, because we have had certain aspects of the institutionalization of the Pan-Africanism ideals. And when you look at some institutions like, you know, Pan-African, I mean, Pan-African University, the African Union, you know, those are some institutions that have come as a result of the idea that we can get African solutions for African problems. Issues around, you know, now we have CDC Africa. These are institutions that have come as a result of creating African solutions for African problems. You look at the result of some of these institutions that in terms of them creating concerted efforts to restore faith in electoral justice in Africa. When you look at, for example, there was a time in Africa where there was a lot of coup d'etats across the continent. And the Africans were very contented with it. Today, I can tell you that the African Union will not accept any person who gets into presidency through a coup d'etat. So these are part of institutionalization of Pan-Africanism. You look at also the civil society of organizations that have come on board to try and push some ideals of Pan-Africanism. You know, like, for example, the Pan-African Congress. There are also Africans in the diaspora who've also coalesced and established groups around these ideals, and through that they are repatriating and bringing profits back to Africa. And even using that to lobby for what they want for their countries, and even establish investments. At the economic fronts as well, there are also organizations and companies that have been established on the basis of Pan-Africanism. When you look at the African development banks, the Pan-African Bank, much of it is in Western Africa. It is based on trying to mobilize Africa to get the best out of the people. Yes.
Well, let me ask you, you just talked about institutionalization of institutions. Well, don't you think that maybe if we engage, and of course, Ndawa was talking about maybe taking back our names and maybe using, stop maybe the things that were given to us by the Western. So we use ours, we adopt ours. What do you think? Don't you think that we might lose much because the education and the civilization and most of these things that we have today, and even the instruments that we're using, even in the television to disseminate information to people outside there, is through the Western guys?
Well, I think I have to differ with that because we are measuring it in terms of how it is seen from the Western lens. How somebody can define modernization in the African context will be based on what the West sees it to be. I think Africa as a continent stood on its own before the whites came, and it could have stood even if they did not come. So Africa as a continent is big.
What shows that Africa could have stood on its own even without the civilization that came from the Western?
Well, I think these people came with their, what I'll call ulterior motives. They came to Africa because they saw the potential in Africa. And that potential that is in Africa is what Africans could have used to forge the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, then let me just come to you directly. What's the relevance of Pan-Africanism in the current social and political atmosphere in Africa generally?
Well, you see, Pan-Africanism is the only sanity that the African politics needs right now to take us to the direction where we really want to be. Because, you know, if you look at the beginnings of the struggle of the return of Pan-Africanism, the struggle was about our dignity, our religion, about our peace, about our economical affairs, you know, such likes, which we have lost because now we have taken the Western kind of culture, even their governance. Our governance wasn't like this, and it was very peaceful, that even communities were coexisting without much fight. So right now, if we could get just the idea of Pan-Africanism in the minds of the African people, and especially the Kenyans, where I have a lot of more experience than any other place, we can go back to where we came from and look at what is affecting us politically, because right now there is a discussion of how to bring all the communities together. Why? Because the colonialists separated us. They gave us a knowledge of the difference between us, and they capitalized on that so that they could gain those ulterior motives that he's talking about from Africa. They can come to your region. If you have gold, they will dig it and just take it away. If you had some diamond, they will just go with it, you know, things like that. So after making us know this, now we have our consciousness is about how different I am from the other ethnic community. And if we can educate our people on this, the rhetorics that are coming out right now in politics, where people are grouping according to their ethnic lines, would be toned down, because I will look at the other ethnic community as my own. They will be part of Africa. And if I chip into what you asked, David, Comrade David, you know, Africa originally was one. And all these countries, the names of countries that we are having now, they were not there. We only had provinces. We didn't have countries. Africa was a country. So they took that advantage to divide Africa into countries, so that we can see the reality of how different we are. So that has made us even know or even learn that we have even different languages. So, and originally we had different languages, but it was to our advantage. It was not to our disadvantage as it is today. We want to go to a direction where Africa comes back to consciousness that our skin is our pride. Our color is our pride. And that is what is going to make us appreciate who we are. And even if we are going through our governance systems, it won't be a problem to us as it is right now. So education on this, where you can say, you can find somebody saying, we want to unite the family, the country. And when a few people come together, you say, no, that is now not uniting the country. And yet they have come to be united, you know, with the other citizens. So how do you define uniting a country when you are excluding other people? When they reach out, you say that is not unity. So
how is Pan-Africanism ensuring that the Africa that was once a continent was one is not balkanized anymore? But instead is coming as one. What is Pan-Africanism doing? Yeah, let me get that from Doctor.
Oh, okay. Before I answer that question, let me just chip into what you had asked initially about the whole concept of development.
Yes.
I think our conceptualization of development initially is one of the things that really corrupted the whole thing about, what comes from outside of Africa is perfect. And it sort of displaced everything that was African. And it is important to rethink this development concept. And if really the Africans really want to move from consumption economy into production economy, we must find ways of domesticating the industrialization and modernization to fit our context. And this is what some of the developed countries did, especially the Asian tigers, and some countries like Ethiopia. They were able to not just copy-paste, but domesticate it to fit their local context. This is one of the things that we have continually failed. And it is something that we really needed to advance. Now, onto the question that you have asked about how Pan-Africanism is
now helping to bring people together.
Yes, now helping
the Balkanized people.
Yes.
Africa as a continent,
Yes.
Balkanized, that they could rule people for their advantage, as you say it. So how is it? What is the Pan-African doing so that it can ensure that these people are coming as one? We had Muammar Gaddafi, who had an idea of bringing the continent as one.
Yes.
Before he died.
Yes.
So what is Pan-African movement doing about that?
I think this is a conversation
Yes.
that we're trying to build. We are trying to build a conversation and trying to change the mentality of people.
Yes.
That we need to come together. And trying to find ways of just institutionalizing some of these conversations. Because remember that it is a tough job. It is difficult. It is difficult because one of the ways in which Africa has been balkanized is through dependency. To the extent that those who are the Anglophones and the Francophones cannot agree at some point. Like the African Union, which is always expected to speak on one voice on key issues that affect Africa. There are instances where the Anglophones and the Francophones go separate ways and they never agree. So these are conversations that we continue to make. And I think that when we look at aspects of even trying to bring education and educate our people into ways in which they can not just view themselves as the pride of Africans, but also infusing research that are based on trying to just bring the pride of Africa in itself. We also want to advance this conversation even at the national level, at the policy level, in terms of trying to make government know that, you know what, the only way in which we can be able to advance the African spirit is to make the African populace appreciate what comes from within them.
But what is it that the movement has already done? You're talking about you're planning to, we need to have this conversation.
So right now what we're doing is basically we're doing conversations. We are doing conversations to influence policy. We are doing conversations to shape opinion, because that is much that we can be able to do. Trying to grow the network, building the network of people who believe in the ideals. Because it is only in building the network, it is only in shaping the conversation, it's only in changing the policy and the policy orientation that we'll be able to, in the long run, achieve the bigger goal. Yes.
Donny, you believe, just as Dr. is saying, that you're trying to build a conversation whereby the people that are making these policies will also consider the policies of institutionalizing the Pan-Africanism. Yes, so my question is, what is it that the Pan-African is doing to ensure that we have guys who believe in the policies of Pan-Africanism? Because I believe that if we could have maybe MPs, or we could have these leaders themselves advocating for a Pan-Africanism, then itself we could have already have maybe 100% institutionalization of Pan-Africanism. So most of these things started at the university. So what are you guys doing maybe at the university level and from your eyes, from where you sit, do you think that Africa has achieved Pan-Africanism?
It's a long road, actually.
Okay.
But we are on course. As I said earlier, we are facing rebellion. You cannot have everybody buying the same idea.
Yes.
So at the moment, as a chapter, as I said earlier, we are trying to sensitize and bring people on board, people of different ideas. As Pan-African Congress has other chapters. Apart from the universities, we have women, we have youths, and all this you brought on board are what actually makes up what we call an institution. So it's through bringing these people who are at the bottom, whom we call they are the structure. So when you bring them together, when you bring the women, when you bring the youths, when you bring those at the university level, when we combine all these ideas with those who are advanced, I think that's what makes us to have a clear path. Yeah, we have a clear path. We have a mission. We have a vision, and I say that these things are achievable. Yes. Yeah, we have done so much, and we are not tired of doing it. Okay. We'll keep on doing it, and
let me get this from Dawa. Sir George, well, why is it that those who fought against atrocity, we have those guys who fought atrocity meted on African by the colonialists, once they acquired, those are guys like Jomo Kenyatta, we had people who like Gamal Abdel Nasser, we have Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah, we have so many Pan-Africanists. So these guys fought for Pan-Africanism, and they fought for the independence, the freedom of their countries. But immediately after they got the independence, they're now involved in the post-colonialism, post-colonial authoritarianism, whereby their government was being even involved in the assassination of the guys of the people that were against them, against their government. What happened? What changed? Because the Pan-Africanism movement was to bring Africans together and not to separate them. But as you see, things change after post-colonial.
Yeah. Before I go to that, let me chip in also to the question that you asked, what Pan-Africa is doing and also has done. So in the institutions that countries are coming together in Africa right now, like EALA, IGAD, like AU, you will find that Pan-Africa is having envoys into those institutions to help us push for the things that we want to achieve.
Yes.
So that is a great milestone that we are boasting of at the moment. If you take me back to the original fighters who brought freedom, this is what happened, and we cannot avoid or ignore, so that we put our heads on a comfort zone, so in order not to address what happened. They captured the power, but I think the confusion came in when the original governance kind of African that we had before the colonialists came was way different. They grew up knowing how Africa is governed in some dignified way, which is having no shortcuts where you can cut short other people. But when the colonialists came, this is what happened. Number one, they sent the explorers, people who saw Mount Kenya first. You know those people. You've heard about these stories. There is somebody who came near the river that passes near your home, and he's saying he's the first man to see that river. So they were trying to confuse our minds, to put us in a situation where we are not people, we are not human beings, so that they are the human beings who see, we can't see. And then after that, the explorers went and they sent missionaries. These were government operatives, the Western government operatives. The kind of our worship changed. They changed our worship and they gave us theirs. They tried to say that our God wasn't God. So theirs is the God, you know. So then we have to trash our God and go their way. Then after the missionaries came, their main job was to harmonize our hearts so that we don't fight, even if anything is happening, you know. So then the politicians came in. So we got colonized. So what they did, their system came to grab lands. You see, the first thing they did was to grab lands because they didn't buy land from anybody.
Yes.
They knew we don't have titles. Even the stories of titles. You see, Africa was living in trust one to another because we were brothers. So they grabbed everything, and our great forefathers that gave us the freedom. They got consumed in that new system. And that's why now we need to have this discussion to go back to where we came from.
Well, this conversation is going on. I really need to know whether thou worships the God that was brought by the Western, or the Pan-African movement of their own God, the African God. Well, we are going to know that after the break. We're going for a short break, but we'll be right back. This is the Insight. So welcome back. This is the Insight with Kwach, EUGYNE Ochieng, and of course I have my guest right here with me. We're talking about Pan-Africanism, and tonight as we're talking, of course, Ndao was telling us about a religion. Because before he tells us whether he worships the God that was brought by the West Africans, well, I'd love to hear from Daktari. Well, Daktari, we have South Africa with the ANC party. We have Tanzania with the Chama cha Mapinduzi, and these are political parties that have been around since time immemorial. That is after independence, and they do not run around individuals and have specific ideology and philosophy. However, when you come to Kenya, we have political parties, but have always been seen as vehicles to take people to presidency and just to take them to where they want them. And now, when we see after winning the elections, we have seen, like for example, in the Jubilee, we have the Tanga, we have the skirmishes, we have the UDA, and our political parties have been formed within tribal lines. You see a political party, it has to be with some, like for example, Jubilee, it will be mostly Kikuyus and maybe Kalenjins, because Ruto and Uhuru are coming from those other places. And then we have ODM. What do you think about this? What's your view on that, generally?
You know, when you look at the comparison between the African National Congress of South Africa and Chama cha Mapinduzi of Tanzania, these are political parties that were based on specific ideologies and had inspiration that they were more inspired by the struggles of the citizens to try to liberate them from the colonial era. So the African National Congress, for example, is a symbol of liberalization of the people from the struggles and the shackles of colonialism. And so as a result of that, the people were able to really attach themselves to that political party. It was initially a movement and then it was institutionalized. And so that party has been institutionalized to the extent that the people believe in the ideals, the party is the people, and the people are the party. Now, when you compare that with a country like Kenya, you know, Kenya also had a party, and we have a party that has been long-standing for many years, the Kenya African National Union, KANU. This was also a party that actually was established from the colonial era, where, you know, they just wanted to use it to inspire and drive the African ideals. of course, it has stayed over time, and it somehow was able to go beyond the ethnic enclaves and the ethnic cocoons for quite some time. But it was because of the then president at that time, President Daniel Arap Moi. Now, I think the greatest challenge that has happened to our political space today is our politicians have sort of been able to deepen our country in ethnic cocoons and used those ethnic cocoons to come up with political vehicles that have got no basis in terms of structures, institutions that are sustainable, and even ideologies. So the idea of most of the parties that exist in this country ends within the ethnic community. And so you get attached to a political party because this political party is going to help your community get to power. But then when you are asked really, what ideas does this political party drive? Even you don't know. When you ask the African National Congress member what ANC stands for, they will tell you it stands for the struggles of the African people and liberating the African people of South Africa and making them to become economically stronger and socially stronger and politically stronger. That is not something that you will find in Kenya. So we live in this political space where our ethnic communities and our people believe that, I get into this party because I know it will help my person who is from my ethnic community get into power. And this is something that has been entrenched by the politicians. So it's still something that it's very difficult to get out of until that time when our people will get to know that we need to bring ideas in the political discourse and forget about our ethnic cocoons. We need to get to know that in the ultimate end, Kenya needed to have an identity. And that identity can only be found and established by an idea.
Well, let me get to you, Donny. Well, the African continent, we fought for independence. We wanted to be emancipated from the yoke of the colonialism of the colonialists. Well, we got it. But when we got it again, we are now involved in corruption cases, massive pillage and plunder of state coffers, and in some cases with the same very people who fought for independence of this country, who fought for the freedom of our continent, are the same people who in their government are involved with these same issues. What do you think about these vices?
Well,
is this the face of Pan-Africanism?
Not really. We cannot castigate those who came into power immediately after independence to be corrupt or anything of that sort. I think corruption as a vice dates back into the colonial times. Let's not look at corruption in the context of looting state coffers or anything. I think them coming to Africa and sending us away from our arable lands, that is corruption in itself. So if we have to blame corruption, we have to blame it on them. They left it. They left it through its roots here.
But if they left it, if they left us to rule ourselves, then it means that the people that want to take the leadership were now to instill new norms to the people and instill virtues to us. If it was because right now as it is, we have first world countries. We have the US, we have Italy, we have those are the Britain. When you look at them in their countries, there's not much corruption. In fact, any leader who is involved in corruption is being jailed. Unlike in our countries whereby the leaders that we have, they themselves are involved in the corruption and in the massive pillage and plunder of public wealth.
Well, if I had the powers, I would have asked you to withdraw that word that some countries are first class and some are others.
Okay.
I don't know on what basis you're trying to see this. What makes us think that Italy as a country is a first world country, or Kenya as a country. Okay, nowadays they call us developing. They saw that the third world is too harsh for us.
So you, according to you, you look at Kenya, you look at the United States of America, sorry, and you say no, we are okay, we are at par.
No, we are not at par. But the problem is we are looking at our own cause in terms of theirs. You know, if we have to compare these two economies, they are far ahead of us. We cannot dispute that.
Yes.
But we are trying by ourselves. According to our standards, we are okay. We are moving towards the right direction.
With the corruption? With
Not
the
really, not really.
Okay.
On corruption and the plunder, I think we have tried to fight it, but there is more corruption in fighting corruption.
Okay.
Yeah, in our quest to fight for corruption, you find that there is more corruption. And those who are claiming to fight corruption are the people who are corrupt. So I don't know whether it's something that, I don't know if it's an oath that these people take when they get...
Let me go to Dawa and let me ask this question as we wrap up the issues about Pan-Africanism. Well, South Africa itself is a leading brother in the continent. And recently, it has been engulfed in chaotic flames, courtesy of the arrest of Jacob and Zuma. What's your view involving the anarchy in the country of Nelson Mandela at this time?
I have been to South Africa.
Yes.
I have friends down there. And I communicate with them like since the time I met them first to date. And I know we may contextualize what is happening in South Africa right now in a way that some people have said that Africans are still being put in a situation or something like that. But you see, if we go through history, there is something that happened between the former president and the judge that made the judgment. And also, if you know how they have been through their struggle, how they have been, the current president never see eye to eye with the former, because of those differences when they were still fighting. There were sellouts and all that. So when they were coming to power, those things were still very heavy in their hearts. So right now, the person who convicted the former president is not a white guy. It's a black judge. So would that still be classified under oppression of the black people? No. It is a black man against a black man. So those differences that they had are still manifesting up to now.
So to you, that is oppression?
It is an oppression. Just like ours is an oppression here in Kenya, where your brother took the governance and took everything away from you, even more than the colonialist. You see, so that would be an oppression, but it is not classified under racism.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is oppression. Okay. Well, now, gentlemen, I'd love us to maybe switch gears and enter into the 2022. Maybe 2022 politics. So BBI is stuck in court, or at least half time, according to Raila Amolo Odinga, that is the former Prime Minister, Dr. Churchill, Dr. Sauke, and he says that BBI is the key to Kenya's issues. From a Pan-African eye, from where you sit, what do you think? Is BBI the key to Kenya's problems, issues?
You see, this country has gone a long way. When you look at where we are from the time of independence all through to where we are now, in terms of building the political space from a unipolar system to multipolar system, in terms of opening up the space for freedoms and opening up the democratic space, in terms of the citizens being able to have their voices in determining who becomes their leader. Even in terms of speaking some of these things around corruption, Kenya has come a long way. And some of these things are things that we must admit have taken very key decisions, national decisions, some of which have had to be things to do with changing constitutional dispensations. Like in 1992, the repealing of Section 2A that brought about multi-party democracy. The 2010 Constitution that brought about the idea of devolution. And when you look at the concept of devolution, the way it came was people believed that the centralization of power and centralization of resources is something that was making some parts of the country to be deprived of wealth and to be deprived of resources. So if we are able to decentralize through Majimboism, you remember there are people who campaigned on the platform of Majimboism. So in my thinking, the whole thing of constructing Kenya, when you all look at all these things, it is about trying to develop the statehood of Kenya that we were given in 1963 into nationhood, which we have never obtained. So it is a whole process. And we admit that bringing on board a new constitutional dispensation is part and parcel of that process. Bringing on board a new constitutional dispensation and constitutional change, it is part and parcel of that process of building nationhood from the statehood and trying to ensure that there is proper distribution of resources around the country. Now, that said and done, how to do this is totally different. We agree, and I would say categorically that Kenya is still ripe for new constitutional dispensation in terms of bettering its governance process. It has come, it is coming, and it will still come in future and in future generations. The whole question is, and this is what the Kenyan public need to interrogate, is not just the process, but the manner in which some of these things are done. Are they things that are sustainable for the future of the country? Or are they things that are just for short-term gains, but not necessarily for the future of our country? For me, I think that is what I would view the BBI process in terms of. I would categorically say that the BBI process is just part and parcel of developing better in Kenya. But then the things that Kenyans need to interrogate and the people of Kenya must interrogate is not that we don't need a new constitutional dispensation, but is the BBI process and the contents of the BBI, is it something that is going to better this country? Is it something that is going to take resources back into where it has never been? You know, I had this discussion previously somewhere, and you know, I made certain proposals, for example, that, you know, the cry of every Kenyan is that irrespective of whichever part of the country where you are, you can't be able to achieve whatever you want, irrespective of your ethnic community, irrespective of where you come from, as long as you have what it takes. And that is my hope, and that is my wish, that, you know, a new constitutional dispensation can be able to bring. And if the BBI process is one of that constitutional dispensation, then I can assure you without benefit of doubt that the future of Kenya will be better.
Well, okay. Well, George, now, do you share the same idea?
Well, you know, if the BBI concept was not politicized, it would have taken Kenya to another level of maturity in politics. It takes long to be perfect in your political field. And even if you look at the countries that have been independent for even 200 years, like America, they may be having challenges, but you see also that they respect the law of the land. So that puts them in a situation where they cannot bend the law in any way. So what we are lacking in Kenya mostly is that the willingness, or rather the goodwill, to let the constitution flow, the law of the land, to be the guide. You know, because there are people who that law can put in a situation in case they mess, but there are people who can just go scot-free, despite the fact that we have it. So, but the BBI is a conversation which we needed to just interrogate and make it better.
Okay, let me talk to the president of KU chapter, Pan-African Congress. Well, we know the deputy president, William Ruto, has been traveling across the country with the hustler narrative. We have the bottom-up economic approach model. How is this viewed through the lenses of Pan-Africanism? That is the bottom-up the hustler narrative. What do you think?
Well, I think everybody has his own idea of doing things. Everybody thinks that his own way of doing things is the perfect way. Bottom-up economic model, as they call it, I think it itself fails to incorporate so many substructures. You need to understand really who is this person who is down here, whom we are trying to empower, like they say. What is his current life situation? And what are you planning to do it? Actually, we are only politicizing this. Things will change, actually, in case they get into power. I don't buy the same idea as bottom-up economics or it's called top-down. There is nothing like that. You'll find that the same people who are trying to bring this thing on board are the same impediments to development.
Yes.
These bureaucracies are creating a barrier to the delivery of services. We brought devolution in 2010, and so far, so good, but not so good. I think this was one of the models, top-down, because we are now moving from the national government.
Okay, let me ask this. Well, some legislators are now, including the Rangwa MP, that is Honorable Kioni, are now pushing for a postponement of the next general election, with the fear that some 26 constituencies will be done away with should we proceed to the election on 9th August 2022. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that it will not be a good idea to go through postponement of elections. And I say this very privy and to the idea that, democracies are developed through cultures. And the culture that you build, if you start certain cultures, it continues. When you look at the longest democracy, the United States, they have always been in the culture of transferal of power, irrespective. Okay? It is part of the national culture that you got to transfer power to the person who has been declared the winner. So you allow institutions of democracies to work and to make the democracy be institutionalized and create an electoral culture. When you look at other autocratic societies that have been able to use constitutional mechanisms to retain themselves in power, they have always gone the directions and have always started through postponement of elections. And I can tell you that if we started today, somebody else who will get into power will only need to marshal the resources and the members of parliament to get enough numbers and postpone election. So it will be a culture that will always be continuing and continuing and continuing. And soon, the voters will no longer have power to determine who becomes the leader.
Gentlemen, our time is almost over. Let me just give you maybe time so that you can, as you wrap the show, you can give your last remark. But as you give your last remark, let me ask you this question. The handshake, if the handshake is reminiscent of the unity that existed in Oginga and Jomo coteries of Pan-Africanism, demanding for human decency, economical, social, and political freedom, what's the role of neo-Pan-Africanism in current social, economic, and political dispensation? In a few words.
Pan-Africa is now supposed to front the biggest issues and make them alive into the hearts of the people. To drive the message home, because all these things are happening, but then nobody is talking about them in depth. And so that is something we need to also address.
Yes.
And the bottom-up economy, if I can say just one word, is neither here nor there. If there was no devolution of offices, like now we have the governors down there, that is the bottom up.
Okay.
So right now there is nothing bottom anymore. What we need to do is just to empower them, and make those institutions reach the people in their basics.
Okay.
That's it.
Let me get from you, sir. What do you think about this general? What's your last remark?
Well, I think I can just take 5 seconds to wrap up on what you asked him about the 2022 elections. Yes. Well, I think we have a constitution, and if you read the constitution, I think it's around Article 102, it stipulates clearly that the terms of the parliament should not be extended for a period of more than 12 months. I think that's Article 2. That's Clause 2. Okay. So the narrative, if it is, of postponing the election for 1 or 2 years will be so bad. Given the history that Kenya has during elections, it will give us a very bad picture as a country.
Okay, let me give Dr. also a chance to wrap up this, but of course, as you answer this, the conversation around 2022 is graduating from ethnic jingoism and tribal balkanization to economic discourse of bottom-up economic development model and other approaches. Of course, we have had Odinga with his and Ruto with his. So is this an advancement on the politics in the view of Pan-Africanism, considering Kanu's session on paper number 10, that is of 1965, of African socialism, and its application to planning Kenya's development? As we wrap up the show.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene.
Yes.
I think this speaks, when you read that session number 10, it speaks deep to the aspirations and the dreams of the African people.
Yes.
To advance their development in the context of the Africans and by Africans. And in the context of the current discourse, it still emphasizes the desire of the Kenyan populace that we would wish to advance to the state of nationhood. The higher aspirations of nationhood, where we are driven by higher ideals of innovation, of creativity, of oneness, of unity, rather than our ethnicity and our tribe. Okay. So this is the bigger cry, this is the bigger aspiration, and in the long run it will ultimately get into economic and even social freedom. If we are able to get it through this kind of discussions that is coming up amongst the political space, I can assure you, then we are going to get it better. Because it is the same politicians who actually embedded ethnicity and tribal politics in our politics.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. Thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in to GBS TV Africa. You obviously know that when it's Friday, 8 p.m., then it's time for the Insight, where we talk about political issues and current affairs. With me, Ochieng EUGYNE KWACH. And of course, that was that for today. Off we go, and have a good night.